Hello everyone. Finally decided to do video 5. I'm sitting here waiting for my buddy at the airport, and I was like, oh, let's use this time to share some more about happiness. So in this video I want to explain or talk about the word happiness and how there's different definitions of it, and what are the deeper, more valuable forms of happiness versus the more shallow, temporary forms of happiness. So, what is happiness? And like any word, really, it comes down to your experience, your own experience of that word. So, for me, happiness can have different levels. But the happiness that I've talked about in this video, or in these videos, is more of a very deep happiness, a peace, feeling of stillness or being content. So happiness isn't quite the right word, but I chose the word happiness because more people can relate to that word than they can stillness. And with happiness, looking at your own experiences and asking yourself, where do you experience this positive, joyous experience? Do you experience it based on something you're doing, an activity that you like, a hobby, watching TV, playing games, hanging out with people? Whatever it is that brings you a sort of a feeling of happiness. Maybe social media, for example. And communicating with other people and talking about life situations and asking questions, answering questions. Maybe that brings you some form of happiness. But the real happiness that I would like to point towards is sort of an untouchable unhappiness. There's an airplane passing. Take a moment to be still. But the happiness that I wish to point to is a happiness that's untouchable, sort of like a flame that can't be blown out, by a wind or a gust. And this happiness or this peace is possible to hold at all times and to not allow it to be blown out in any way. So it's not based on situation. So if your happiness is based on doing something, then inevitably it can be lost. So it's not the deepest level of happiness. The deepest levels can really be touched. And the secret to finding that untouchable happiness is in finding happiness with simply being, with existing, like having its foundation exist in simplicity rather than complexity. So if you can truly feel a sense of gratitude or happiness for just being alive, and not necessarily based on doing this and doing that and doing something else, and you're fluctuating between happy and sad, or happy and depressed, or who knows, all these fluctuations, that means that you're not rooted in a deeper happiness of simply existing. So the practice is all about how do you reconnect with appreciating just being alive, just being, without needing to do anything. And meditation definitely can help with that. Studying, looking into conscious spiritual practices can help. One of the main, I guess, not secrets, but like most helpful pointers to experiencing the untouchable happiness is having a certain mastery over your mind. Because when the untouchable happiness, so to speak, is actually our default state deep within. It's our natural state of being. But it may not feel like that because over years we've been conditioned to create all kinds of stories and problems and drama in our head, thanks to the voice in our head, the mind. So in order to get back to that default happiness state or content state, peaceful, blissful state, it does take some sort of effort to find the source of the unhappiness, which is the mind itself, which is the thoughts. Whenever you feel disrupted, your peace of mind feels disrupted, it can guarantee you that there are some thoughts that have been repeating in your head that are creating this experience, this negative experience. And so in other words, experiencing the untouchable happiness is also a silent experience internally, which is something that it took me a while to realize, that like enlightenment is a silent experience. The whole goal of quieting the thoughts is to be in mental silence. For some reason that just didn't quite click until one day, the right time and the right words, it suddenly made sense. I was like, oh, all of this that I'm seeking, I'm really just seeking silence. But the mind gets like all agitated by silence, and it doesn't want to be in silence. It wants to maintain its existence, so it's talks, covers up the silence. There's also a tricky paradox between seeking and projecting what you're seeking into the future. That can be pretty tricky, because on one level, if you want happiness, you have to seek it. You have to make an effort to find it, an effort to create it, to manifest it or cultivate it, to find deeper levels of it, like you're doing right now watching this video. Or, if you study other people, or, you do your own writings and your own studies. There's a certain effort there. There's a certain desire for something that you're seeking. And yet at the same time, seeking itself can become an obstacle that projects what you want into this continuous, perpetual future moment. So saying that, oh, I want this untouchable happiness, but, I'll get there. I'll find it, right? Or through practice, one day I'll finally get there. But every day you're holding that belief that one day in the future you will get to experience it. And one of the most powerful points to actually experiencing it is that it can really only be experienced right now, in this moment that you're hearing these words. If you don't get it right now, you're not going to get it tomorrow. In a sense, but it's a paradox, and I try not to think about it too much. We're trying to avoid overthinking. So if it creates more thought than a aha moment or a feeling of, oh, okay, then just drop it for now. The other thing about like studying happiness or studying consciousness and trying to learn to master the mind of things is that there's a lot of depth to it. And what I've learned is it's always valuable, if you find something helpful in the beginning, to go back to it and re-watch it, reread it. See if you can discover something that you missed the first time. Because there's a lot of layers in this process. And what we hear the first time is what we needed to hear the first time. But then the second, the third, and fourth time, you're in a different place. You're different, I don't know, state of experience and awareness and attention and intention. So you might hear something different that's equally or more valuable than the first thing you heard. Another tricky thing about ego is that a lot of times it gets us by making us feel like we understand something completely, when in fact we don't actually understand it completely. But we think we do, and as soon as you think you understand something completely, you no longer really listen to it, trying to discover something new, with like the sincere curiosity to find something even bigger, or even more potent, or more powerful. So, that's another good little thing to always keep in mind. To keep the beginner's mind is a valuable practice, and I try to do. Now that I've been talking about this stuff for a long time and practicing it for a long time, but I always remind myself, sort of reset, go back to beginner's mind. Sort of put everything back into question and look at it from the non-biased, non-experienced way. And that way you can see it with fresh eyes, like, be like a child, so to speak. With a sincere curiosity. So yes, see if you can get a taste of the untouchable happiness. And then once you get a taste of it, it's just a matter of how do you carry it with you. And there are lots of practices for doing such. But the first part is tasting it. You can't go and buy honey, without tasting it first and knowing that you want to go buy honey. And more than likely, everybody actually has experienced moments of it. It's just that the mind quickly came right back in and took over with its patterns. And so the person or the being didn't really get to slow down enough to recognize it for what it was, which was a glimpse of enlightenment, a glimpse of the untouchable happiness. Okay, I think that's good for today. I will see you in the next video. And enjoy the various forms of happiness that you experience today. And notice which ones are more solid in a foundation, less wavering back and forth, and the ones that fluctuate a lot between like, oh, I'm really happy, and then, oh, I'm really sad, and oh, I'm really happy, and then, oh, I'm really angry, or in some negative state. Okay. Enjoy the moment. Much love.